Now let's look at non-formal education. The right to basic education is a widely considered fundamental human right, and it is an essential precondition for the progress of the nation. The existing formal education system has not been able to cater to the needs of the Indian population. The Constitution of India in Article 45 mentions compulsory primary education for all children up to 14 years of age. This has not been possible even after 52 years of independence. This has created the need for a new, revised educational system concentrated mainly on the rural poor who are outside the mainstream of formal education. The new system is known as non-formal education. It is outside the formal education programs. It imparts continuous education to the participants irrespective of their age, sex, and educational background. Non-formal education has varied contents in which socio-economic, political, and cultural factors are closely connected. The scope of non-formal education covers activities ranging from simple memorization to the learning of complicated technologies. It covers all areas of formal education, including rural development, nutrition, health, family planning, and agriculture. It enriches the learning received through formal education. It exploits the available time and interest of the individual in bringing out the inherent knowledge so that the individual can improve his or her conditions of living. The methods followed by non-formal education are mainly the learner-oriented and based on dialogue between learner and educator. Non-formal education has certain differences from informal education. The International Council for Educational Development, that is ICED, has drawn a valuable distinction between non-formal education and informal learning. By informal education, we mean the truly lifelong process whereby every individual acquires attitudes, values, skills, and knowledge from daily experience and the educative influences and resources in his or her environment, that is, from family and neighbors, from work and play, from the marketplace, the library, and the mass media. We define non-formal education as any organized educational activity outside the established formal system, whether operating separately or as an important feature of some broader activity that is intended to serve identifiable learning clienteles and learning objective. Covers all the important educational objectives of imparting knowledge and skills. The history of non-formal education in India shows that non-formal education was used in the early Vedic period without being called so. The present nomenclature and concept came to India in the early 70s when, at the UNESCO-sponsored seminar, the out-of-school education was stressed as a strategy of ever-eluding objective of universal elementary education. At the seminar, the term informal education was proposed, but the participants rejected it because it had the connotation of incidental educative purpose. Therefore, a new term, non-formal education, was proposed and accepted. Over 40 years after the seminar, it bears a wider meaning and its scope is spread from the least extreme of literacy to the last stage of media education. The classic definition of non-formal education, developed in 1973 by P.H. Coombs and A. Ahmed, is any organized activities outside the established formal system that is intended to serve identifiable learning clienteles and learning objectives. It can operate either separately or as an important feature of some broader activity. Then, later, a number of Indian as well as foreign educationists defined the term with necessary alterations. In 1974, the report of Ministry of Education in India clarifies that non-formal education is meant to cover various educational needs of non-school going children or dropouts. These programs are supposed to be differentiated based on conditions prevailing in various environments. These are oriented to help children to improve their work, earnings, health, family life, understanding of the natural and social surroundings. In the year 1978, the document of UNESCO's regional office at Bangkok mentions some general objectives of non-formal education programs intended to promote awareness through pre-literacy education and acceptance of learning as a means to individual and national development, to provide equal educational opportunities for all, and through them more equitable distributions of gains and employment avenues, to establish national infrastructural needs and manpower, as well as to make communities self-reliant through improved management skills involving them in planning, organization and implementation of the programs, to effect transfer of technology to a more need-based area of activity, to mobilize existing potential local resources in the community, and to promote programs for non-formal education directly linked to productive skill and tangible gains. The concept of non-formal education was developed in relation to less developed countries. The villages in India suffer from inadequate education facilities, and so the rural masses are systematically discriminated from the benefit of development. Indian educationists and economists think about the practicability of it. According to Malcolm S. Atsalia, the non-formal education is wide-ranging because it comprehends all learning outside the formal system and has no parameters of time and space. It can be classified for preschool, non-school and under-school children in the age group of 4 to 15, and for youth and adults unschooled or underschooled needing new additional skills in the age group of 15 to 60. Non-formal learning can be classified by the learning content involved into these organized activities, where the major emphasis is on general education and also those where the content is mainly vocational. According to Aravind Chandra, education which is imparted in a free atmosphere without the rigidity of rules and regulations associated with school or college education is termed as non-formal education. The academic objectives of non-formal education are clustered around school dropouts, functional illiterates, unemployed and underemployed youths and adults. There are a number of educational activities and programs that can be termed as non-formal education, including literacy, adult education, distance education, open university extension facilities, including those of agriculture, health, population education, and so on. So, the process of education provided to the child or adults or any group which is structured but outside the formal education is normally called non-formal education. As for the objectives of non-formal education, Dr. Shirur says, the objectives of non-formal education are to provide basic knowledge and skills, practice and attitudes necessary for each group to become conscious of their needs and problems, and also to achieve their individual and social goals. These descriptions prove that non-formal education has become a medium for social change, as the knowledge and skills are needed urgently. So, the process of education provided to the child or adults or any group which is structured but outside the formal education is normally called as non-formal education. Not only in India but also other countries, a lot of work has been done in the field of non-formal education. The concept had emerged initially in Western countries. Developed as well as developing countries take initiatives to promote non-formal education. In our neighboring country, Sri Lanka, the government and other agencies are conducting non-formal education programs for rural and community development. Under non-formal education, full-time and part-time technical courses run for school leavers and adults. These courses intend to give an opportunity of learning skills which would lead to employment or self-employment. In the year 1958, China started an impressive program of half study, half work, both in urban and rural areas. It is true that in its implementation, the Chinese authorities have disagreed with the nature and content of non-formal education, but they uniformly realize that Chinese education must stand on two legs, that is, the leg of formal and the other leg of non-formal, which is flexible and open education. In rural sectors, three types of non-formal education programs are envisaged. The first form has been designed to supply skilled human resources for China's slow but persistent increase of rural mechanization. The second model of non-formal education in China is the short-term training classes and education extension services. This program has a combination of offering a basic level of literacy and an effective extension and demonstration program. The classes at the commune focus on specific agricultural techniques such as seed selection, water conservation, production, and so on. The third model is non-school information dissemination activities. In this model, farmers demonstrate their techniques. The additional non-formal mechanisms are the use of television and radio and the publication of books and magazines popularized for the rural public. A successful non-formal education program was conducted in Tanzania. It was an integrated program with features like adult education centers and teacher training programs through mass media. The Directorate of Adult Education was formed in the Ministry of National Education. In the words of Daniel Babunda, Literacy themes were printed on popular textiles, and local dancing groups and jazz bands popularized the movement through their music shows at local functions. Political and government meetings would not be complete without a literacy component. The activities of individuals and organizations, both public and private, were mobilized in the war against illiteracy. In other words, a national will to eradicate illiteracy was created. Non-formal education revolution in Tanzania was a great success because the national will was present throughout the revolution. Now, non-formal education has become a part and parcel of the lives of Tanzanians. Japan's current education system originated from the Fundamental Code of Education in the year 1875. In the year 1920, the term Shakai Koyuku, that is social education, became official, and then it used to indicate education carried out in non-formal ways. The Social Education Law of the year 1949 defined it as organized program for educational activities, including programs for physical education and recreation, mainly for youths and adults, except for those provided in the curriculum of school based on the school education law. The social education in Japan have 5 specified characters. Self-directed independent learning, that is through distance and correspondence education. Environment-based learning via multimedia. Human relation training, that is group leadership training. Volunteerism involves voluntary service for other people in need, and community-oriented activities. Now, Japan is one of the most developed countries in the world. In short, developed as well as developing countries consider the relevance of non-formal education as very crucial. Development means the upliftment of human beings with reference to their socio-economic life. In this, education plays an important role. A large section of our population is not able to respond to formal education because of a number of socio-economic problems. But in the case of rural areas, the problem is acute. In this situation, the importance of non-formal education programs cannot be overestimated. Formal educational institutions are mainly concentrated in urban areas. According to the 1991 census, the general literacy level was 52.11%. Of the literates, the urban population constitutes 16.2% and only 44.69% in rural areas. Formal education still remains beyond the reach of most of the people in rural areas. Non-formal education is the answer to rural illiteracy and ignorance. The report of Ministry of Education says the 5th five-year plan educational strategies is also based on the assumption that non-formal ways of imparting and requiring education will be developed for all categories of learners and on all levels of education for children, youth and adults from elementary to higher education. Rural development does not start with goods and commodities. It starts with people's needs and desires. it can be achieved through education. Non-formal education can meet many aspects of rural development. It is necessary to establish interrelationship between occupation and non-formal education through training of village industries, handicrafts, self-employment and other means. Students of professional institutions, polytechnics and universities can play a very effective role in imparting skills to rural people. This kind of help link their degrees and encourage them to take up voluntary activities. Functional education programs can be divided into three types: literacy programs for non-school going children in the age group of 6 to 14 years, vocational education, family welfare education and literacy programs for youth in the age group of 15 to 25 years, functional literacy for job improvement and self-employment programs for adults in the age group of 26 years and above. The teachers and the persons responsible for the execution of the non-formal education programs are called change agents. Non-formal education for rural development has been incorporated in many schemes, projects and plans for the upliftment of the rural masses. Rural universities on the line of Mahatma Gandhi's revolutionary ideas on education can lead to the transformation of rural areas. Education is a powerful instrument of national development, economic, social and cultural. The national leaders realized that a revolutionary approach is needed to bring radical changes in objectives, structures, process and organization of education. Before independence, the policy of education in India was not national in character, as the country was under foreign rule, and the educational policy objectives aimed at fulfilling the purpose of a colonial government. It is expected that India's population will cross China's population by the turn of this century. 50% of the total illiterate population in the world lives in India. It is only by spreading the facilities of education that India can emerge as a new and stronger nation. This can happen only when illiteracy is wiped out completely from our country. A lion's share of our population between the age group of 5 to 35 years is not able to receive formal education and does not get the benefit of regular education either. Therefore, the system of non-formal education should be utilized to tackle this growing problem. Various education commissions and national policies stressed the system of education outside the formal structure of education. The Education Commission of 1964-66, set up by the Government of India and popularly known as Kothari Commission, recommended non-formal education on a large scale for out-of-school children and adults. The Commission put stress more on literacy, continuing education, correspondence courses and such means. All these were to be linked with adult education programs. The Commission presented that India was more illiterate in 1961 than 1951. So, a massive unorthodox national effort is necessary. All economic and social developmental plans have their human aspect and involve a large number of persons who have had no schooling. It is therefore logical that every developmental project in whatever field should include an integral part and plan for the education of its employees, more especially of those who are illiterate. The Commission also recommends correspondence course for those who are unable to attend regular courses. There must also be a method of taking education to the millions who depend upon their own efforts to study whenever they can find time to do so. Correspondence courses or home study provide the right answer for this situation. Lessons should be disseminated through the media of radio, television, and magazines. The Commission recommended fullest exploitation of mass media of communication, which can be effectively used as a powerful instrument for creating the right learning environment. It can also impart knowledge and skills necessary for improving the quality of work and standard of life of the people. The Kothari Commission has recommended the setting up of libraries all over the country and the use of school libraries for the public benefit. Libraries play a crucial role in imparting knowledge and awareness. Universities can make a valuable contribution to the proper development of non-formal education. The Commission recommended that each university should have a department of adult and continuing education. Our universities can take the role of open universities and thereby grant education to those who want to satisfy their desire for knowledge. It is necessary that this is linked with employment and impart vocational education which possesses potential for future development. In this context, universities should perform certain functions. They are social, economic, and cultural development, enlightening the society to the advantages of new scientific conclusions, re-educating workers in various professions, re-educating teachers, developing new methods and skills of teaching, creating awareness of hygiene, cleanliness, population control, and providing training for various subjects. The directive principles of Indian Constitution provides the provision of a free and compulsory education to all children up to the age of 14. Between the period of 1951 and new National Policy of Education in 1986, a number of institutions were started for elementary education. However, this is not fully effective to attain the real goal. The national policies of 1968 and 1979 give much emphasis on elementary education and adult education. The Education Commission of 1966 has rightly stated, education does not end with schooling, but it is a lifelong process. So, in the year 1985, the newly elected Prime Minister addressed the nation to propose a new and dynamic educational policy for India. National policy in 1986 gives greater emphasis on non-formal education. A large and systematic program of non-formal education will be launched for school dropouts, for children from habitations without schools, working children, and girls of whole day schools. Effective steps will be taken to provide a framework for the curriculum, but based on the needs of the learners and related to the local environment. The fifth 5-year plan's educational strategy is also based on the assumption that non-formal ways of imparting and acquiring education will be developed for all categories of learners and on all levels of education for children, youth and adults from elementary to higher education. Non-formal education was proposed for rapid eradication of mass illiteracy because half of the illiterate population of the world lives in India, which also proposed to utilize non-formal channels of education like television, radio, postal coaching and so on. A separate educational TV channel has also been suggested. Centrally assisted schemes were introduced for running non-formal education centers in the 10 educationally backward states of Uttar Pradesh, Jammu and Kashmir, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Andhra Pradesh, Bihar, West Bengal, Orissa, Arunachal Pradesh and Assam. The aim of the policy was to ensure that all children up to 14 years were provided free and compulsory education before the year 1995. This non-formal education system of centers and facilities will be broadened. It will be brought up to the level of formal educational facilities with specially trained teachers from the community so that children passing out of non-formal education can enter the formal system. Curriculum in schools will be guided by both national core as well as needs in the local environment. According to the policy, the highest priority will be placed on solving the problems of dropouts and ensuring retention at the school level. This effort will be supplemented by non-formal education